So I upgraded my own system back in December, January, around that time, and I thought it'd be nice to build a PC out of spare parts and other things for my sister. She isn't very picky about what she's gonna get, because who can turn down a free gaming PC? Let's talk about the specs. We have an FX 8300 for the CPU, an XFX RX 480 gig for the GPU. We have 16 gigabytes of Kingston HyperX Fury DDR3 RAM, 120 gigabyte SSD from PNY, a generic 500 gigabyte hard drive, a 500 watt PSU from Ares Gaming, and a 760 GMA P34FX MSI motherboard. All wrapped up in an air-cooled bolt case with tempered glass, as well as 6 fans I put in. 3 normal fans and a total of 6 up here ARGB fans. Overall, I think the obvious bottleneck is the CPU. So the FX 8300 is from AMD's Bulldozer architecture, launched all the way back in 2012 with a not so great reception, as there is controversy if it is truly an 8-core CPU. Clocked at 3.3 GHz with a boost of 3.9 GHz, as with all FX CPUs, you can overclock it. A lot of people getting 4 or more gigahertz. I simply put it at 3.5 gigahertz, as I myself am not much of an overclocker. Moving on to the GPU, we have a tried and true classic, the RX 480, which this specific one I've got here is the XFX version with the blower cooler. For a blower style, it hasn't been that loud, at least to my ears. Launched back in June 2016, it was a GPU with the goal of VR for the masses. Now we'll start with a little Cinebench, scoring on the multi 2,842 and with a single score of 434. Scoring much lower than Intel's popular offering at the time, the i7 2600K, which is actually 1 year older than this. Quickly some 3D mark, scoring 8,341 in Firestrike, and in Time Spy, 3,646. Now moving on to what most people want, the gaming benchmarks. We're back to Halo Infinite, a consistently greedy title to run. I first start off with the medium settings, usually sitting around the 40 to 50 FPS in most cases. It's perfectly serviceable. Honestly, is the best I could say. Bumping down the quality to low with anti-aliasing at high, we're seeing about 10 more FPS than medium, and low for Halo Infinite still looks pretty good. I could definitely say the bottleneck is the FX 8300 in this system, but once again, very serviceable. GTA 5 may be coming on in years, but it is still a very popular title, and in some cases, makes older hardware struggle a bit. Benchmarking this game was me running around for 30 minutes doing typical GTA things, driving around, and causing other mischief. The most intensive part of this run was being in the heart of Los Santos, surrounded by many other vehicles and people dropping into the 40s. The FPS rises when you get more out into the desert. I even tried out checking the bushes Crispy always checks out. Surprisingly, it didn't drop too much. Overall, the bottleneck is the old FX, as the RX 480 can definitely push more frames if it's paired up with a better CPU.
Why, hello, how you doing? How can I help? Can't handle the heat, my friend? Okay, leave it with creepy Uncle Lester.
That's messed up.
Moving on to Splitgate now. If you want that arena shooter with a portal twist, this is your game. If Halo Infinite isn't able to run for you, you should consider Splitgate. This esport title runs very smoothly, with high settings, with epic view distance, and you get plenty of FPS. And don't be alarmed by those 1% and 0.1% lows, often having those stutters as soon as the match starts. I benchmarked this like most of the games with rounds. The average is 3 rounds, On another note, Splitgate players seem less sweaty than Halo players. I jest. People seem pretty interested in Ghostrunner, so I decided to shove this into the benchmarks. Ghostrunner being a cyborg ninja cyberpunk themed game, everyone loves cyborg ninjas. Good news, everyone. Even with the FX 8300, the game runs very smoothly, even at high settings, usually around the 59 to 60 FPS mark. With that said, the 1% and 0.1% low are stutters that happen when moving on to the next area, and at most dropping to the 30s during a cutscene. Hopefully it runs this well when the game actually releases. Rainbow Six may not be my cup of tea, but I went ahead and benchmarked it. I'd love to inform you that this game runs splendidly at 1080p Ultra, usually around the 80 to 90 FPS mark. Doesn't help my gameplay. The average is a bit high due to the loading in between rounds. If you're feeling extra frisky, you can go even 1440p with very high settings, and get frames perfectly above 60, or you can set it lower for even more frames if you want. So yes, this game will play with the specs. Now I gotta benchmark Fortnite. So I'm not surprised that Fortnite played very smooth using pro settings, often sitting around the 90 FPS mark. The lows are from jumping out of the battle bus, but once you're on the ground, it tends to stabilize, though a few frame drops here and there, but nothing to make it unplayable. Though I suggest capping the FPS to 60 FPS for the smoothest gameplay. Other than that, I'm really enjoying Zero Build. You shoot someone and they don't turn into a house. So Genshin Impact is always quite the popular title. For the most part, the game stayed around 59 and 60 FPS, with an occasional dip here and there. With a game like this, it won't be much of a hindrance. But if you're looking for a nearly locked 60 FPS, I would recommend bumping the game down to medium, which visually only looks like you lost a little bit of shadow quality, at least to my untrained eye. Valorant is quite the CSGO alternative. So Riot's Valorant is a well-optimized esports title. This set ran very smoothly. I don't even notice any major stutters while playing. At high, we get a very playable FPS, usually above 100 at all times, except a few times here and there. So if you want to guarantee an even higher frame rate, you could crank the settings even lower. Not bad for the FX 8300, since this is a more CPU dependent title. Now wrapping up our benchmarks, we got Minecraft. Now we have Minecraft, I don't need to introduce this game, as long as you haven't been in a rock for the last 10 years. Starting off a new world, we get the usual rendering lag as the game tries to generate new chunks. But as we stabilize, our average sits around the 80 to 90 mark. Maybe setting it too fast will help the game out. I'm not too sure, I honestly didn't check it out. That concludes the benchmarks for the system. I want to include Apex, PUBG, Overwatch, and Warzone, but I honestly ran out of both time and patience. I'm still not too used to this yet, but I got more games in than last time. I know Apex will run this machine, because the first iteration of this system had a GTX 950 in it instead, and it ran roughly around the 60-70 FPS mark, if I recall. And Overwatch is absolutely well optimized, so I would expect good results. Now, would I recommend the 480? Absolutely! It still holds up for the most part here in 2022. The FX 8300, it was obsolete at launch, but was still a decent budget option pre-Ryzen. The Ryzen 1200 will play games much better at cheaper prices and on a newer platform. Though, if you're still rocking that FX chip, it's honestly up to you to keep going with it till you're absolutely sure you're finally done with it. This processor has a special place in my heart as it carried me for years and was there for me at the start of my streaming career. And this system is plenty enough for my sister, as it's going to be mostly for schoolworks and Roblox. This concludes this video. Like, comment, subscribe, and whatever else you want to do. See you guys next time.